The day we were supposed to get our marriage license, Jason said he'd meet me there. I waited outside the courthouse till it got dark, practically shivering, before I finally called him. The phone picked up with a bunch of guys laughing. "I told you Wendy would wait all day. Pay up, pay up." Jason chuckles, "All right, Wendy, it was just a bet. Go home, okay?" I hung up, stunned. I looked up and saw this seriously good-looking stranger grinning at me. "Hey," he said, "wanna get married? We could go in right now and get it done." I was caught off guard for a second, then whispered, "Yeah, okay." "Jason," I said, sniffling because my nose was running from the cold, "are you almost done? We gotta go in before they close." "Wendy?" Jason sounded surprised for a second, then asked, "What time did you get there anyway?" 9, I said, glancing at my watch, trying not to sound too bummed. "It's okay, I filled out all the paperwork. You just need to." A round of hooping and hollering cut me off. 6 hours. I knew Wendy would wait 6 whole hours. "Give me the cash, come on." "Jason." A wave of unease hit me. What are you doing?" "Huh?" Jason's voice was laced with amusement. "Just a bet with the guys, nothing serious. Why don't you head home?" "A bet?" My whole body went stiff. "So, we're not getting married today?" Jason must have been on speaker. The roar of laughter on the other end blasted into my ears, making me feel incredibly small and stupid. Jason laughed again. "Come on, Wendy, let's be real. Just go home. No need to make a big deal about it." A burning sensation pricked the back of my eyes. "You're really not coming?" The dial tone was the only answer. I wiped away the tears, not even caring if it messed up my makeup, when a cheerful voice suddenly spoke right in front of me. "Hey, wanna get hitched, miss? We could go right in and do the paperwork." I looked up, confused, and met a pair of bright, smiling eyes. The guy wore a leather jacket and his hands were shoved into the pockets of his jeans. He was leaning forward, looking right at me. "What do you mean by that?" My face flushed. I'm pretty shy and don't usually talk to strangers. Even around Jason's friends, I always felt awkward. "I got stood up, and looks like you did too," the good-looking guy said, his smile widening. "Two sad cases. Might as well partner up." I looked down, seriously thinking about it. My grandma wasn't doing great, and I didn't know if she'd make it through the winter. The way she'd smiled when I told her I was planning to get married still made my heart ache. I looked up and said, "Okay, then." Jason wasn't interested in marrying me, so what difference would it make who I married? He seemed surprised that I agreed so easily. "Oh, okay." He ruffled his hair, and then pulled a document from the briefcase another guy was carrying. "Just, sign this first." That's when I noticed he wasn't alone. The paper had big words on the first page, "Prenuptial Agreement." I flipped right to the end, pen in hand, ready to sign, but he stopped me. "Hey, maybe read it first, huh?" I dropped my gaze. "Does it say you'll mess with me or use me for your own amusement?" "No, not at all." "Does it say I have to be a good wife and all that stuff?" No, mostly, it's just about." "Then it's fine," I said quietly and signed my name with a flourish. It couldn't be worse than things were with Jason. I'd been with Jason for 6 years, since college. I first saw him when I was a junior. My roommate, obsessed with the game Heroes of the Realm, dragged me to this tournament the school was hosting. "Wendy, you gotta see Eric. He's the hottest player, and he's gonna win this thing. You have to come with me." Back then, Jason hadn't become the wealthy little master yet, and was an up-and-coming esports star. After the match, they did a random drawing for audience interaction, and I somehow got picked. "Which player impressed you the most today?" My face was burning hot, and I stammered, Eric, I guess." My roommate had only told me about him. I had no idea who the other guys were. "And why did he impress you the most?" He's cute." The crowd burst into laughter, amping up the energy in the place. Jason had headphones on and was drinking from his water bottle, but he froze and looked at me, surprised, and then smiled this huge, dazzling smile. The stage lights were shining down behind him, blindingly bright. The noisy arena went silent, and I could only hear my own heart thumping, thump thump, thump thump. A few days later, his team had another match and they sent me tickets, prime seating, too. There was also a note with 5 words. Watch closely this time. After the match, I went to the player lounge to give him a gift. Here's a mouse pad with a wrist rest. You use the mouse a lot, and your wrist might get sore. I glanced up at him, and his smile made my heart race. Thanks for the tickets. My roommate loved you. Your roommate did? Huh? I looked at him, confused. His smile was mischievous, and his eyes shone. What about you? Do you like me? I stared into his eyes, totally hypnotized. Why yeah, I do. Who wouldn't like such a bright and dazzling guy? Jason nodded, satisfied, grabbed my phone, tapped a couple things, then gave it back. He then tapped my forehead with his finger. Go home. And text me later. I blushed, looked at the name he'd given himself, and thought, Jason sounds way better than Eric. Jason's base was in another city, but his matches were all over the country. Our school was only hosting a few games, so he flew out pretty quickly. But he texted me every day, never missing a beat. When Jason was in Chicago, he complained about the food being too spicy. He was afraid of getting sick. I found his address and secretly ordered him some milk tea and fried chicken before his stream that night, leaving a note, you need energy to win. Go get 'em. The next morning, I saw his text back, delicious. Thanks, Wendy. I buried my face in my pillow, giggling, feeling completely happy. Later, when he was in Phoenix, he said that there was a lot of great food. He sent me pictures of his meals. It was a whole table filled with different things. I saw the pictures late at night and joked, Eric, posting food pics late at night is not cool. Jason texted me back right away with a voice note. I put on my earbuds and pulled my blanket over my head, pressing play. His laughing voice came through, don't worry, I'm responsible for you. 3 days later, I received a huge box of stuff from Phoenix, with a little note attached. Being responsible now. When Jason showed up in front of my dorm with 99 white roses after graduation, I'd even imagined having 2 kids with him. But now, looking at the marriage certificate in my hand, I was surprised by how calm and detached I was about the fact that my husband wasn't Jason. Let's exchange numbers, I said, pulling up my QR code. I'm Wendy. You can call me. I know, the guy said, smiling. I saw your name when we were filling out the paperwork. It's a pretty name. I'm Kyle. I also got stood up today. But my family is really putting the pressure on, so thanks for doing this. He gave a wry smile and pulled out a ring box. Here, you should have this. I stared at the sparkling teardrop diamond ring and sighed silently for the girl that never showed. Also, Kyle said, once I accepted the ring, our situation might be a bit complicated, and I might need your help to meet my folks. I shook my head. It's okay. In a couple months, I might need you to come home with me. My grandma has always wanted to meet her grandson-in-law. Of course, Kyle nodded, smiling. And even though we're only doing this arrangement, we're family now, so you can always come to me if you need anything. The word family hit me strangely. Okay, I said, relaxing a little. Back at my apartment, I looked around at the mess I'd left that morning. I sighed and started to tidy up. I stepped on something. It was the necklace that Jason had given me. It had broken that morning when I was rushing to get to the courthouse. I'd been too worried about keeping Jason waiting to pick it up. I guess it was a bad sign. Maybe my relationship with Jason was supposed to end today. Jason was a big deal in the esports world, and even after he retired, he was still the beloved little master of a wealthy family. Why did I believe he'd want to marry someone like me? Tears rolled down my face, landing on the broken necklace. Jason's phone call came just then, his voice slurring. "Wendy, I don't feel good. Can you bring me some of that soup again?" "Hey, it's me," someone else answered. "Jason is wasted. Can you come and pick him up and bring that soup you made before?" I chuckled. Every soup I made for him was different, but no one ever noticed. I wanted to refuse, but seeing the things I'd just gathered, I figured it'd be better to give them back in person. "Send me the address. I'll be right over." When I arrived, Jason looked a bit better, leaning back on a sofa, eyes closed. "Jason," I said softly. He opened his eyes, looked at me like he couldn't be bothered. "Come give me a hug," he said, holding out one arm. There were low whistles in the background. "All right, Jason, enough of the show." I bit my lip. "Jason, you just stood me up, and now you want a hug?" He laughed lightly, looking at me with amusement. "Are you mad?" "Okay, so I lost a bet. That's why I told you we were getting married." "Just a joke with my bros. Come here, wifey, give hubby a hug." It was always like this. My eyes filled with tears. He had made me perform a song at his party because I played the peepaw. He had made me tell jokes because I was so quiet. Even his stupid bets used me as the punchline. "Jason," I said, handing him the bag. "Don't call me that. I'm married." "What?" Someone dropped a glass, making it hard to hear. Jason tapped his ear, looking annoyed. "Wendy, stop mumbling. Speak up." I raised my voice. I said I'm married. The room went quiet, all eyes on me. The atmosphere turned tense. Jason's face darkened, and after a long pause, he let out a harsh laugh. "Okay, Wendy, now you have some spine. That's something." "No," I shook my head, handing him the bag. "These are the things you gave me. I put them together. If you're missing anything, just let me know and I'll mail it to you. We shouldn't see each other again, avoid misunderstandings." "Goodbye, Jason." I gave him a forced smile and turned away, tears finally pouring down my face. The room was eerily silent. Everyone was afraid to speak, while Jason's face looked like a thundercloud. Sue, can you go check on Wendy?" Kevin, Jason's friend, nudged his girlfriend. "Tell her to calm down. Tell her to come back and talk it out with Jason." Jason didn't say anything, but he really hoped that someone would go bring Wendy back. He knew the bet had been a bit much, but he'd just buy her something nice and tell her a few sweet things, and then she'd get over it. She'd always been like that, sweet and gentle, never wanting to stay mad at him for long. "Maybe not," Sue said, swirling the red wine in her glass. "Did no one see the ring on Wendy's left hand?" "I told you guys not to make that bet. Now you messed up and scared her away. You're gonna have to go chase her down yourself, Jay." "A ring?" Jason felt a surge of heat go to his head. He slammed a bottle down on the table. "So, she's trying to force my hand, huh? She bought herself a ring to make a point?" Wendy had become spoiled, thinking she could use lies to manipulate him. She was making him look bad in front of his friends. "Fine," he said, his fist clenching. "She wants to play this rip the Band-Aid off game? Let's see how long she can keep it up." When I woke up the next day, I saw a text from Sue, saying that Jason had been furious after I left. I sent her a smiley face. "It doesn't matter to me anymore." Sue and I were very different, from different backgrounds. We only became friends because we'd both suffered through our boyfriends' get-togethers. "Are you really done with him?" Sue asked. "Yep," I typed on my phone. "You always told me Jason wasn't good for me, right?" Sue sent a goofy face. "I'm rooting for you. You go give Jason the biggest headache. When you finally get married, I'm giving you a huge gift." I chuckled, covering my face with my blanket. Even Sue didn't believe I'd actually gotten married. No wonder Jason was so mad, he probably thought I was just being dramatic. My phone buzzed again. It was a text from Jason. "Come and take your stuff." Wendy, if you want to break up, do it right. I still had a lot of clothes at Jason's. Every time I went over, Jason would try to get me in bed. I wasn't comfortable with premarital sex, but Jason was really into it, and I truly wanted to be his wife. Gradually, I kept more and more things at his place. Now that we were over, I needed to take them back. I wasn't like these rich kids who could throw things away on a whim. Jason lived in a fancy gated community. My ride couldn't get through the gate. Sorry, Miss Wendy, the security guard said, looking at me apologetically. Mr. Jason said that no unfamiliar vehicles are allowed in. You have to go in on your own. I nodded and started the long walk. Jason always made things difficult when he wasn't in a good mood. I remembered once when I had asked him to come home with me, and he had refused. I annoyed him by asking too much, and he dumped me off at the entrance to the neighborhood. I had to walk for 20 minutes before getting home. He was leaning against his car, smoking, waiting for me. He saw my eyes were red from crying and raised his eyebrows. Calm down, are you still upset? I bit my lip and shook my head. When he pulled me into a hug, I started sobbing, clutching at his shirt. Please, don't leave me. Okay, I won't leave you, he said as he brushed the hair from my face, placing a kiss on my forehead. It's okay, Wendy. I'm here for you. Luckily, Jason hadn't changed the lock code yet. I entered the numbers and the door opened with a beep. I stepped inside and stopped, surprised. Jason had a beautiful girl pinned against the kitchen counter, gently brushing the hair from her face, his lips a hair away from her cheek. The girl was facing me and looked shocked when she saw me. She blushed and pushed Jason away. I thought that seeing this would make me hurt, but my heart was beating steadily. I just felt strangely calm. My fingers touched the ring on my left hand. Falling for Jason was sudden, but letting him go seemed to be happening quickly, too. Sorry to interrupt, I said quietly, not looking at them. I'm just going upstairs to get my things. I'll be quick. But, within 2 minutes of being in the bedroom, Jason followed me in, staring at my face. My mom sent her over as soon as she heard we argued. I simply nodded. Jason's mom didn't like me, and was always trying to introduce him to other girls. You guys should get along. Don't make her sad. A shadow fell over me. Jason leaned in, looking intense. Wendy, I'll only give you one chance. You ask now, and you can still be my girl. You want to get married, too, right? So, ask me. Do you always have to wait for me to say something first? He had forgotten that I'd asked him to marry me twice. Once when we were watching fireworks, I snuggled up next to him and asked. He never gave me an answer. Another time, I'd even bought a ring, but he told me to stop with a low, stern voice. Wendy, don't be embarrassing. Put it away. And now, he wanted me to ask him a third time. But I was done begging. I snapped my luggage shut. Everything's here. If there's anything else, just throw it away. Thanks, I added, heading out. Wendy. Jason, breathless, caught up to me. He blocked me from leaving. Are you trying to push me to my limit? Why are you being so dramatic? Just calm down, you're making a big deal about this. See that, Jason, I said, holding up my left hand to show him the ring. I told you I got married. He scoffed. Oh, come on, Wendy. A fake ring? Are you trying to fool yourself? Who do you think you are, some woman who can just show up at the courthouse and find a husband? Jason grabbed my wrist. I cried out, Jason, I really did get married. Let me go. Then, out of nowhere, someone flashed past me. Jason's grip on my arm loosened and I fell backwards, landing in a soft embrace. I looked up, stunned, into those familiar, smiling eyes. Kyle? The smiling Kyle from yesterday was now looking serious. His eyes were burning as he glared at Jason. Stay away from her. Jason rubbed the spot where he'd been cut by a tree branch and smirked. Oh, really? The little master's trying to steal my girl? Your girl? Kyle raised an eyebrow, reached inside his jacket and pulled out a marriage certificate, which he opened up for Jason to see. See? Name, Kyle. Wife, Wendy. He then took my left hand, showing off my ring. And this was shipped from Paris last week. He pulled me close, holding me to his chest. I want to ask you, Jason, why are you harassing my wife in broad daylight? Jason's eyes widened. Wendy, what is he talking about? It means what it sounds like, I said, looking down. Jason, I told you yesterday, I got married. You. Jason's chest was rising and falling. Are you getting back at me? Is that it? You're getting revenge because I stood you up? And you just randomly married some guy? Do you know who Kyle even is? His dad's bastard kids are about to come for his inheritance. That's why he needs to be married. Wendy, can't you use your brain? Are you really so desperate for a man that you'll take just anyone? Kyle suddenly let go of me, grabbed Jason by the collar and punched him, swelling his face. Jason was stunned, then tried to hit Kyle back. They started fighting. I rushed forward and grabbed Kyle, turning my back to Jason. Don't fight. Jason's heart seemed to seize, watching her. He quickly stopped himself, looking at me. His girl. Why had she run into someone else's arms? Feeling that it had become quiet behind him, I gave Kyle a little pat and said, "Get up." The angry Kyle did as I asked, but still put himself in front of me, coldly eyeing Jason. Jason, I said, my expression blank. I willingly married him. You knew my grandma wasn't doing well and just wanted to see her grandson-in-law. You didn't want to marry me, so I had to find another way. I was foolish to have such pipe dreams. But this is fine. We're done. I tried to pull Kyle away, but he stopped, looking at Jason's wounded eyes. Next time, Mr. Jason, when you decide to marry someone, don't make her wait all day at the courthouse. Girls as cute as Wendy get snatched up fast. He held onto my arm, helping me walk. He paused, with a wicked smile. Oh, that's right. You might never find a girl as cute as Wendy ever again. Jason's eyes were glued on Wendy's back, a feeling of dread gripping him. He thought that maybe this time, he'd lost Wendy for good. Kyle took me to a mansion that was even fancier than Jason's. It even had an outdoor pool. I hesitated, you're really rich. Kyle grinned and winced. Ouch, yeah. Just a little. A tiny bit. His smile made me laugh. Is this an issue, Wendy? Kyle asked, his joking tone vanishing. Oh, no, not at all, I said, feeling nervous. I won't ask for anything from you. You don't need to worry. Oh, yeah, I remembered, we signed a prenup, didn't we? Kyle sighed. He reached out and touched my wrist where Jason had grabbed it. If I knew it was you, I wouldn't have signed that. Huh? What did you say? I hadn't heard him, because he was looking down. I said. Kyle looked up, back to his usual self. Your wrist is hurt too. Let me put some medicine on it. I watched him carefully applying the ointment and lost myself in thought. It wasn't a big wound, but he treated it so gently, like he was holding something delicate. He looked up at me, his eyes gentle. Wendy, are you free to come meet my family for dinner this weekend? I blinked, remembering what Jason had said, and realized. Okay. But, will your family think I'm too ordinary? Like Jason's parents did. But Kyle just laughed and said that the only thing his grandma cared about was for him to bring a girl home. One of my friends refused to get married, and then he brought a boyfriend home, and my grandma freaked out. She was worried that one day, I'd bring home another guy. I nodded, holding back a laugh. Okay, then, how about your parents? What kind of gift would be best? Kyle was quiet for a second. My dad's overseas. My mom divorced him when I was little. I never saw them much. Don't worry, just let grandma like you. The poor kid. Looking at Kyle, with his head down, I thought of a puppy with its head hanging after being scolded. I reached out and ruffled his hair. Don't be sad. I'll help you. No one's going to steal your stuff from you. No, that's not the whole thing. I mean, I wanted to get married just for the inheritance, but Kyle felt trapped. He had only wanted to get married for money. He had been lucky to meet Wendy. Kyle wasn't lying. As soon as his grandma saw the marriage certificate, she was over the moon. She called me baby over and over again. Grandma, Kyle said, what are you doing? Wendy and I agreed that only I can call her baby. Grandma laughed, hitting Kyle on the back. Silly kid. You're jealous of me, are you? You kept her a secret, and now you bring her to Grandma? Wendy, she took my hand. How long have you two been together? Huh? I was confused. Kyle hadn't prepared any answers. I had to stall for time. A while. It's been 5 years, Grandma, Kyle jumped in. She took pity on me and ordered me some food. I was so poor, I didn't have any food to eat. He then acted pathetic. That was the most amazing meal ever, and I swore that I would take her home and feed her for the rest of her life. I bit my lip as Grandma was laughing heartily. Kyle was so good at this. He sure seemed to have some experience with fake marriages. Just as I was getting relaxed, my mom called. She always messaged me. Calling meant something was wrong. My heart started racing. I answered quickly, Mom, what's wrong? Is it Grandma? Wendy, my mom whispered. Why didn't you tell me your boyfriend was coming? Why did you leave him alone? My boyfriend? I gasped. Mom, did he tell you what his name was? What is wrong with you? It's that Jason. Hey, I see him. I'm going over. Mom, who's calling you? A bad feeling hit me. Wendy, come back right now. She rushed. He moved Grandma to a fancy room, and he got all sorts of doctors involved. The head of the hospital is here. Okay, Mom, I'll buy a ticket to go back today. Kyle wanted to come with me, but I told him not to. Grandma said that your brother is eyeing your shares. I patted his arm. Sort your mess out. I'll be back soon. Kyle grabbed my sleeve, looking upset. You're not going to run off with Jason, are you? No, I laughed. I'm not one to look back. It was the middle of the night by the time I got back to the hospital. Grandma was already asleep. I felt relieved that Jason hadn't upset her. After calming my parents down, I went straight to Jason's hotel. He opened the door, smiling like he expected me to come back. You must be tired, baby, after driving all the way here. He went to hug me, but I stepped back. Jason, I said quietly, if you have money to burn, go throw it on the street. Jason chuckled. What are you talking about? I just wanted to do something for Grandma. Don't make me sound like a spoiled brat. What do you want? My throat felt tight. Jason, you didn't want to marry me. Now you're hounding me. I'm not some young girl. I can't play these games anymore. I'm already married. Please, just leave me alone. Married? To Kyle? Jason's eyes were bloodshot. He pinned me against the wall. Do you think you'll be happy with him? Do you know how hard his stepmother is? His ex ran away, and you're just blindly jumping into the fire. He opened his phone. Look, these are from 3 days before your wedding. He's still flirting with other girls. You don't think he was into you? Come on, Wendy. No one cares about you as much as I do. The phone showed Kyle with a pretty girl. She looked like she was angry and was turning away, but she was smiling a little bit. Kyle was reaching for her hand. So, that was the owner of the ring. My fingers touched my ring. I knew that Kyle had been dumped, but the pictures still bothered me. Jason noticed my reaction and pulled me into the room. White rose petals were spread across the bed, making a heart shape. He got down on one knee, ring in hand, and said, Wendy, marry me. It was the scene I had imagined since college. The greatest dream I'd ever had. But now that it was happening, all I felt was tired. No, I said, shaking my head, one word at a time. Jason's face changed. Why? Wendy, he was trembling, and the ring dropped. You always wanted to marry me, right? I smiled sadly. So you always knew. I don't want that anymore. Jason, I squatted down, picked up the ring, and put it in his hand. My voice was gentle. I don't love you. Maybe from the moment you threw away my engagement ring, I stopped loving you. I'm not staying, because I still have feelings. I just needed to be free from loving you. So, let me go. My words cut through the air like a knife. He'd thrown away a ring from Wendy. The great Jason had been around the world, and Wendy had brought the ring to him in a tiny box, and he'd somehow knew what Wendy was going to say. But he thought she was only 26, too young to think about marriage. So, he stopped her. She had been a bit shocked, but she'd still given him the box. She never said anything, but only that she had bought it because it looked good. A few months later, Wendy asked why he didn't wear the ring. It was just a platinum band, the diamond too small to see. He'd lost it without caring. That wasn't a ring for Mr. Jason. I don't know, he'd said while putting on his tie. I must have lost it. He'd seen the light in her eyes dim, but she still straightened his clothes and kissed him softly before he left. But they had already been broken at that point. I wanted to move my grandma back to a regular room. A fancy hospital wasn't sustainable for people like us. But Mom said my grandma had been getting worse, so moving her around so much would be bad for her health. But, I sighed, we can't afford this for long. Who says you can't? A smiling voice came from behind me. Kyle came in, carrying a ton of bags. Mom, Kyle said, smiling at my mom. I'm Kyle, Wendy's husband. We got married last week, and I'm sorry I didn't come earlier to say hello. My mom's eyes widened. Married? Wendy, you said you were getting married to Jason? On the one side was a smiling Kyle, and on the other was my confused mom. I gave Kyle a look, and hid my face. He's good at making up stories. He's got a lot of experience, after all. Let him figure this one out. Kyle had a friendly smile and easygoing nature, unlike Jason's sharper looks. My mom quickly believed his story and seemed to like him more and more. It was a sudden thing. I haven't had the chance to give Wendy her dowry, so Grandma wanted me to bring it now. Kyle pulled out a card and gave it to my mom. This is $2 million. Please accept it. My mom gasped, but took the card. Since it's for Wendy, Wendy should keep it. Kyle shook his head. This is for you and Dad. Wendy will get hers separately. I'll take her now. I was so confused that I didn't know what to say. Only after we got into the car did I speak. Why did you do all that without telling me? It was to help you, right? Kyle looked at me. Now that we've sorted out your family issues, let's solve the stuff from outside of the house. I rubbed my temples, feeling a headache coming. I regretted telling him about everything Jason did. What do you want to do about the outside problems? I grabbed Kyle's sleeve. Don't start a fight. Grandma asked how you got hurt, and I can't lie this time. No fighting. Kyle chuckled and pulled a document out of his bag. I have good stuff this time. I'm going to show it to him later. What is that? I took it. The cover read. Share transfer agreement. I, Kyle, voluntarily transfer my 37% shares of the Kyle Group to my wife, Wendy. She is the largest shareholder when the agreement goes into effect. Are you crazy? My voice was shaking. Don't worry. Kyle tucked my hair behind my ear. The Kyle Group is doing well. There's no way we'll bankrupt. And if something goes wrong, I'm still responsible. That's not the point. I tossed the paper back to Kyle. You got those shares. You just gave them to me. Who cares? Kyle gave a little laugh. What's the company if I lose my wife? Don't say that. My heart clenched. We're going to get divorced soon. Once your girlfriend wants to marry you, we can go get it done. What girlfriend? Kyle looked surprised and sat up straight. I bit my lip and showed him the picture Jason had sent me. Is she the one you were going to marry? Kyle opened his mouth and closed it. Yes. You two have known each other for years. You had that ring for her. Kyle closed his eyes and sighed. Yes. Then, what's there to say? I laughed, wiping away my tears. Wendy, you're such an idiot. Kyle took me and a share transfer agreement, signed only by him, to Jason's hotel room. The man who was just moping around in the car now acted tough. He held me and pushed the paper in Jason's face. You've been messing with another man's wife. You should see if you have the ability to do so. Share transfer agreement? Jason looked annoyed. Kyle, you're really going for broke this time. But does it matter? Do you think I can't afford it? Kyle raised an eyebrow and lifted the tape recorder under his coat. I wonder what Mr. Jason would say if he heard this. I heard you have some stuff going on with your brother, right? Jason's expression changed. You set me up? Who gave you that idea? It doesn't matter, Kyle said, laughing. Stay away from my wife. Inside the elevator, Kyle said he's only good at talking, then turned to me, his eyes bright. Don't worry, Wendy, he won't bother you anymore. Back in my city, I received a box from Jason. Inside was the ring he'd given me when he proposed and a note. This is my last gift to you. I scoffed and left it at the door for the delivery person to pick up and send back. He did stop bothering me, though, and so did Kyle. The only good news was that Grandma was feeling a lot better after Jason had gone to see her. She said she didn't get a good look at the guy, and she wanted me to bring him home again. I smiled and nodded, thinking that maybe I should find another guy to bring home next time. The day the snow melted, Kyle texted, asking if I had time to have dinner with him and some friends. I thought about our marriage agreement, which was valid for 8 more months, and agreed. I also put his ring in my purse to give it back to him. I hadn't worn it since I'd come back home. Kyle picked me up after work. He noticed the empty finger immediately. Where's your ring? It's here. I pulled out the velvet box, smiling. I'm giving it back. Kyle thought for a second and took it. Okay, it's fine. It's not yours anyway, so just don't wear it. My eyes started to water again, so I pinched myself hard and swallowed the tears. Kyle drove me to a fancy restaurant. When he opened the door to the private room, there were only 2 girls inside. One of them went to pull Kyle into a hug, and I realized that it was the same girl from the pictures. I felt a sudden chill, followed by anger. But then the girl said, "Hi, sis-in-law," and my anger dissolved. What was happening? I looked at Kyle, confused. Kyle looked annoyed and asked, "Stand up straight, Chloe. Tell her, did you agree to marry me or not?" The girl looked upset. Yes, I did agree. But, even though I bailed, it didn't hold you up, and you got this amazing woman. Shouldn't you be grateful? Kyle nodded. Fine, so tell her, why didn't you show up? Well, she glanced at the tall girl, my sister didn't want me to go. I can't make my sister sad. You have to make your wife happy, and I have to make my sister happy. Huh? What was she talking about? You see, Wendy, Kyle sighed, looking at me. She was just being used. I never actually liked her, just a deal. After dinner, Kyle drove me home, but neither of us said much. Just as I was about to turn and go inside, he called out, "Wendy, you didn't trust me because of those pictures. I didn't want to make it even harder for you. I was a mess during my teenage years, but I never messed around with girls. I'd never put you in such a position." My throat was dry. Why are you telling me all of this? Wendy, I don't want a marriage on paper only. I don't want a divorce. So, he stepped back and kneeled down. He had another sparkling ring. This ring was meant for Chloe, but it's not meant for you. It's not special enough. I worked with a designer to make this and also learned to cut a diamond for 3 months to make this. I also put our names on it. Will you marry me? My hands covered my mouth, and I held back a sob, my voice shaking. But we already got the certificate. It's different, Kyle shook his head. The last time was only for 1 year, this time, it's for a lifetime. Can I love you for the rest of my life, please? I cried and nodded, and he placed the ring on my finger. The man I'd been waiting for had finally appeared, and he was standing in front of me.